Hello, good evening. This is News Night. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo has called on personnel of the Ghana Police Service to execute their duties with absolute professionalism. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Shirley Ayoko-Boche, assures Parliament that Ghanaians living in South Africa are safe in spite of the attacks on nationals of other African countries. The Ministry of Health has urged assemblies to construct more CHIPS compounds to bring quality health care delivery to the people living in hard-to-reach communities across the country. In business news, the introduction of solar-powered irrigation system into the agriculture sector expected to mitigate the impact of low and unpredictable rainfalls among other farmers in Ghana. On the news across our borders, a suicide bomber has killed 8 soldiers and injured several others in an attack on a military camp in Yemen's southern city of Zanzibar. My name is Josephine Oppong-Yeboah. In our first story, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Shirley Ayoko-Boche, has assured Parliament that Ghanaians living in South Africa are safe in spite of the attacks on nationals of other African countries which began last Saturday. According to the Foreign Affairs Minister, Ghanaians' mission in South Africa is monitoring the situation closely to ensure the safety of Ghanaians living there.
In a repeat of what happened a few years back, South Africans are once again on the rampage, attacking migrants from other African nations, looting and vandalizing their small businesses, and brutalizing some of them. There are even reports of deaths of African migrants. The South Africans accuse these foreigners of taking jobs meant for them, illegally connecting electricity, and parasiting on other government services like water, healthcare, among others. Since last Saturday, when the xenophobic attacks in South Africa began, many Ghanaians, especially those with friends and relations, have been worried. But on the floor of Parliament Friday, Ghana's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Shirley Ayoko-Boche, assured the House that Ghanaians living in South Africa are safe.
In view of the foregoing, there is an increased level of apprehension within the Ghanaian community in Gauteng, who, bearing in mind the 2015 incidents, are uncertain about the future. Our mission in Pretoria has instituted a number of measures as follows. 1. The mission has visited many shops owned by Ghanaians in the sunny suburb of Pretoria, informing them of the developments and the need to activate all early warning signals using social media groups to provide information in advance of any attacks. Pretoria shop owners have been directed to close their shops immediately the threats are deemed as imminent. Mr. Speaker, our checks indicated that no Ghanaian nationals or their businesses has been affected in the recent attacks.
The leadership of the House raised serious concerns on the issue.
Mr. Speaker, for how long can we continue to do this kind of diplomacy whilst our people continue to suffer? For how long can we continue to do this kind of nice talking whilst our people continue to suffer in each other's hands? Mr. Speaker, there are so many South African businesses across Africa. In fact, our last checks in 2015 in the Pan-African Parliament indicated that South Africa was rather even doing more businesses across Africa than any other African country. Meaning that their interest in our various countries put together, the business is so huge that in actual sense, they were riding on the back of Africans and were benefiting than the parochial thinking back home that others have come into their country to make them jobless. Can all Africans avoid any product from South Africa as a way of showing them that we depend on each other? Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to know, and my colleagues who are on Pan-African Parliament will tell you, since the xenophobic attack in 2015, I have never bought anything in South Africa apart from the food and water that I drink.
Mr. Speaker, Ghana has done much better than Nigeria as far as these matters are concerned, contributing to liberating the states in Southern Africa. But Why all of a sudden are we witnessing these matters? Mr. Speaker, I believe the answer is simple. I believe the answer is simple, primarily attributable to misgovernance. South Africa at independence was the largest economy in Africa. Over just 2 years, they have lost place. Nigeria has overtaken them, and the economy keeps shrinking. Dumso has now afflicted South Africa, and there is massive and colossal corruption taking place in South Africa. And the ordinary people are left to their fate. Mr. Speaker, these things that are happening are not at the instance of government. It is against government, and they are venting their spleen on the other African nationals who, in their view, have come to take their places, even though ordinarily many of the jobs that these African countries, nationals from other African countries apply themselves to, would ordinarily not be taken up by the South Africans themselves.
Sitting resumes Tuesday, 28th February 2017.
From that story, the Upper East Regional Minister Roxanne Bukari has urged the people of the region to shun partisan politics and rally behind the government to bring development to the area. Speaking at his maiden interaction with the people since his appointment, Roxanne Bukari said the development gap in the region can be bridged if everybody pitches in, no matter their political partisanship.
These are supporters of the New Patriotic Party who came to welcome their new regional minister who had just returned from Accra after being vetted and sworn into office. In his address, Roxanne Bukari said he was not appointed to champion the interest of the supporters of the party alone, but to work with everybody, no matter their political persuasion, in order to bring the needed development to the region.
Let us blaze a trail around the rest of Ghanaians, around our manifesto, and desist from us which may drag our name into disrepute. We must separate party business. We must separate party business from that of government. And I'll make it a point to avail myself at the regional office of the New Patriotic Party on Friday. Every Friday, I'll avail myself at the regional party office to serve the people of the Upper East.
He added that the deplorable road network, challenges in the provision of healthcare services, and agriculture will be his priorities. Roxanne Bukari said he would not tolerate mediocrity and indiscipline and will do all he can to ensure that the Akufo-Addo government puts smiles on the faces of the people as it prosecutes the party's development agenda.
You're still watching News Night. Let's go for a breather. Please stay. Hello again, thank you for your time on News Night. In other news, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has called on personnel of the Ghana Police Service to execute their duties with absolute professionalism. Addressing personnel of the service at the 2016 National Police Headquarters end-of-year get-together was in Accra, the President urged them to also maintain law and order and ensure neutrality in the delivery of their duties.
The Wasa celebration is a long-standing tradition of security agencies in the country where the gallant men and women in uniforms meet to make merry, take stock of previous year's activities and take a look into the year ahead. It is also an opportunity for the service to reward officers who have distinguished themselves over the years. Acting IGP David Asantia-Pietu stressed on the service resolve to fight crimes in the country and maintain law and order by continuing with the policy of making themselves visible in all communities, cities, waterways and highways.
The above feats notwithstanding, pockets of security challenges in the form of robbery, petty stealing, avoidable road crashes, communal clashes, and recent upsurge in mob actions until still undermine our efforts to provide safe environment for all. Jungle justice must not have a place in our society. I want to assure that those who perpetuate these acts of lawlessness will be pursued and smoked out to face the full rigors of the law.
Minister for the Interior, Ambrose Derry reiterated government's commitment to support the service to achieve its vision.
I am aware of the numerous challenges facing Ghana Police Service, such as logistics and accommodation, among others. The government is committed to providing the needed support to make the police more effective in the performance of its constitutionally mandated duties. In consonance with the MPP manifesto commitment, governments shall facilitate the provision of incentives to motivate the police service and other security service under the Ministry of the Interior.
President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo commended former IGPs for their service and hard work, which has resulted in the success story of the police service. He wished the acting IGP, David Asante-Apietu, well in the delivery of his mandate and noted that after the constitution of the Council of State, his position will be confirmed. He urged personnel of the service to work hard with the highest level of acceptable professionalism and stressed on the need to increase staff strength of the police service to achieve the internationally acceptable ratio.
According to the United Nations, the police public ratio for any country should be 1 to 500. Currently, we are well below that number. And as I stated in Tuesday's message on the state of the nation to Parliament, my government will continue recruitment into the police service with the aim of meeting the UN ratio. We will also ensure gender equity in this regard. As President, and together with the leadership of the police service, we will ensure that you are left to focus on your core mandate and not be an appendage of my government.
He also stressed on his government's readiness to adequately resource the police service. For Metro News, Adele Kwesi Machtube reporting.
Away from that story, the head of policy at the Ministry of Health has urged assemblies to construct more CHIPS compounds. He said this is a sure way of bringing services to people living in hard-to-reach communities across the country.
The increase in cost of healthcare and the limited access prompted government to try scaling up the CHIPS compounds, but resource constraints hampered the project. But in 2005, World Bank funding allowed government to try to build more. The CHIPS compounds make it easier to provide healthcare services even in remote communities because of community participation, empowerment, ownership, gender consideration and volunteerism among others. In view of this, the head of policy at the Ministry of Health, Benjamin Nyakute, says standard CHIPS compounds are established in the various electoral areas.
The funding of the CHIPS program, government is playing a role, but in the same vein, any individual civil society organization can equally help. For now, development partners are helping us. Government is also allocating budget to it.
No, we've identified some challenges with regards to infrastructure, with regards to finance, with regards to equipment, with regards to human resource, and with regards to quality of service delivery. These are the challenge areas. We still need to train those who are there. And then the community volunteers, we need to train them on the CHIPS policy, the implementation guidelines and so forth.
MPs present welcomed the idea and pledged their support.
We embrace the idea. We think that we can advocate. And as I said earlier, the cost of the standard chip compound is beyond even our health fund. And that is why we suggested to the ministry officials that if they can put up a project and get the Minister of Health to solicit for funding.
The program was attended by chiefs, queen mothers, coordinating directors and civil society organizations.
Away from that story, women's handbags can be a powerhouse for different kinds of bacteria. This is according to experts who claim that 20% of women carry more bacteria than the average public toilet. Well, in the following reports, my colleague Eugenia Akofa-Kume investigates how through this accession is and how often our ladies wash their handbags.
Simply cannot do without them.
Usually I take everywhere I go. Most of the time I have my handbag with me.
It's very important to us.
But when it comes to our health, the price of a handbag does not matter, neither does the brand. Whether you got it off a hanger in a retail shop or from a bend-down boutique, experts say our handbags can make us sick if we do not take proper care of them.
A lot of these women's handbags are contaminated with fecal matter, especially where they place them, when they go out and so on.
Some ladies Metro News spoke to say they know exactly what they have in their handbags.
Our money, our phone, even our parts, we put them in our handbag.
We do to carry our makeups or lipsticks and a lot of things. Sometimes the men even say that you can even find a sponge in the ladies' bag.
But the things on the outside are startling. Studies show that 1 in 5 handbags contain more bacteria than the average toilet. These bacteria can cause serious eye and skin infections. Unfortunately, women tend to focus more on their hair, clothes, shoes, but the handbag is often the least pampered.
I don't even remember the last time I washed my bag.
Why is that?
Let me say laziness.
When we get up early in the morning, we are in a hurry, we have to look sharp and do a lot of things, so we don't have time to wash it. Well, I don't wash my handbag. I don't even remember the last time I did. Because I feel the more you wash it, perhaps it might get spoiled or something.
But think of your handbag as your pair of shoes. You've probably dropped them where others have walked, spat, or even eased themselves.
Open defecation is very, very rampant. In Ghana, for instance, more than 5 million people have that habit of defecating in the open, about 20% of the population. So we are more exposed to fecal matter than certain developed countries where people hardly find the space to defecate in the open. So since we still have that habit, we have to assume, and then we also have much drier environment. It means our environment is much more contaminated than those in the other parts of the world. So if I drop my bag inside this shop or this office, it's likely to be much faster contaminated.
I will bring you the full story in a subsequent bulletin. Let's go for a breather. Please stay. In business news, for years, Ghanaian farmers have had to grapple with unreliable and unpredictable rainfall patterns in their bids to boost farm yields. The situation has not only resulted in huge losses, but also poor harvest. The situation might soon be a thing of the past with the introduction of a solar panel irrigation system which only relies on sunlight to keep your farm moist and fertile for plant growth.
It has been recognized the world over that any country that depends on agricultural production as a basis for industrial development is more likely to fail if irrigation is not part of the agricultural development plan. Given this, one finds it difficult to understand why Ghana has since independence been without a consistent and comprehensive policy to guide its irrigation development and expansion. Without reliable energy services, farmers and agribusiness in developing countries such as Ghana are less likely to improve yields for domestic and foreign consumption. The introduction of the solar-powered irrigation system is expected to mitigate the impact of low and unpredictable rainfalls among farmers in Ghana. The German technology-based firm Lorenz, which is introducing this new system with a pilot project at the Chumdanso farm at Domiabrain in Sawam, is expected to ensure an all-year supply of water onto farmlands. From this control room, the farm manager is able to manage the flow of water from a borehole through the drip system onto this one-care fruit farm. The system ensures that there is an all-year provision of water for the farm and domestic use, especially on farmlands which are located far from residential facilities.
So the reason for this farmer to invest into such a solar irrigation system is that he can now produce crops off-season, which means that he can get better crop yields, cash yields out of his crop, and also he can increase the number of harvests that he can have onto his field. So this will mean he has higher value crops and he has more harvests, which has a significant effect onto his income.
The Chumdanso Farms, which has been in existence for over a decade, now makes use of this technology, which has proven very efficient.
So solar pumps pump water using only the power of the sun, and as long as the sun keeps shining, you will have water.
The farm manager shares his excitement.
Look, you don't see anyone on the farm. The plants are getting watered. Okay, they have as much water as they need. Who wouldn't want this? One farmer, I could do about 5 acres and still, not need too many people, maybe just an assistant. So I think this is the way this is the future. Talk of modernization.
All right, so that was Prince Anand with sports. In news across our borders, a suicide bomber has killed 8 soldiers and injured several others in an attack on a military camp in Yemen's southern city of Zinjibar. My name is Josephine Oppong-Yeboah. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you again at 10 p.m. for the late edition of the news. Have a good evening.